Hey, lovely family, you most welcome to your favorite cooking channel, Cooking with Raba. This year we're going to do our cooking with a bit of twist. So, for your special occasions, your birthday, the parties, the anniversaries, and all those ones, and some days you just want to spoil yourself, this is a cake recipe to try at home. So, we're going to make some regular cakes, where we're going to do it in different forms. So we're going to do our regular cakes. Now, for our cakes and our baking, a basic rule is about the measurement. You can't do freestyle baking. And you can't say, I like too much sugar, I like too much margarine, I like too much flour, something. It has to be well balanced. So you need to make sure that you scale well. So you saw me adjusting my scale to make sure that it was well positioned. Now my scale has the pounds and the kilograms, but I'm going to be using the pounds to measure. So what I did was to measure a pound of margarine. So if you're looking at a pound cake, it's usually a pound of margarine and a pound of sugar. A pound of biscuit could be a pound of margarine and half pound of sugar. And then a donut could be like a pound of margarine and then 1/3 part of sugar. So for this one, I was doing a pound of cake, which is a pound of margarine and a pound of sugar. So I usually fold the plate up when I'm measuring the butter or the margarine. That makes it cleaner for me. Then I measured the sugar, a pound of that, and then I'm just going to mix it together and then make sure that I cream it up. Creaming means you're going to stir it till the margarine and the sugar they mix beautifully. Now, like I was saying, for baking, it's very essential your measurement. So you need to make sure that before you start baking, you have every ingredient and you have it well measured. You need to be very consistent. If you're going to use a pound, you need to be consistent. If you're going to use a measuring cup, you need to be consistent. If you're going to use a bowl or whatever, anything you want to use to measure your ingredients, just go with it and be consistent with it. So you can cream using your wooden spoon, which is easier, or which one is the to just do it, a longer wooden spoon or something to stir it up. And this was demonstrated by my little boy IJ here. It's very good when you're creaming your mixture to go in a particular direction. So if you want to go clockwise, make sure you just go clockwise. If you want to go anti-clockwise, make sure you go anti-clockwise. But just don't be doing clockwise, a bit of anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise. It's not the best. So you need to make sure you take a direction and then you cream towards it. Now, this may seem like a lot of work, but then it's possible you can do this manually. This was totally manual cake done here today. So just in case you don't have a mixer at home, you could always go with this. But if you have a mixer, it makes it easy for you because you could easily do this in your food processor or your cake mixer. You just need to make sure that your margarine and your sugar are well mixed together. One thing you have to take note of is that when your cake mixture is done, the color changes. You realize our margarine was very yellow, but then at the end of it, it was whitish. Another thing you want to know is that usually, if you don't want your cake to be dense, you need to really cream it well for it to be light and fluffy. And when it's lighter, when you scoop it, it should be dropping from your ladle. Your wooden ladle or your spatula should be dropping from it. Another thing you need to realize when your mixture is ready is that aside the color, aside the dropping, you realize that it feels lighter. Unlike the solid margarine, you realize that this is a bit easier. And sometimes, depending on how well you do it, it could double up. And it's not only granulated sugar you can use, you could equally use the powdered sugar. If you use a powdered sugar, what you get is that you get a much fluffier, softer cake. So it depends on what you want. But at the end of the day, how fluffy or how dense your cake is pretty much about how well you cream your margarine and your sugar, and then how well you beat your eggs. So to do this cake, I added a bit of chocolate chips, just to give it some nice stuff. And then eggs. So I used 9 regular eggs. If you're using larger eggs, you could do like 7 or even a 6, depending on how large they are. For medium eggs, you could go like 8. Then I used some nutmeg in the egg mixture. That takes away the yin part. So the nutmeg in your eggs checks how nauseating it comes out. And then there's baking powder, which I added to the flour to help the cake rise a bit. Now in my smaller glass back here is my essence. It's about a tablespoon or less of vanilla essence. Vanilla essence always smells great with cakes, but you can decide the type you want. But usually vanilla essence is perfect for cakes. And in the larger one, I have some brownie and Treacle mixed together. So that's like half teaspoon of brownie and half a teaspoon of Treacle. So the Treacle and the brownie, what it does is that it gives your cake a nicer color and it beats down the sugar because the Treacle is from sugar which has been melted and burnt technically. So your sugar, add a bit of water, you leave it on fire, you let it come a little bit to burn to give it that bitter taste and then that dark color. And that checks the sugar content in your cake. And then you have your flour. So for a pound of cake, you need a pound of flour. So like I was saying, you need to make sure that your mixture is well creamed. And then you need to make sure that your eggs are well beaten. So for your eggs, you need to break them up. Then you just add your nutmegs and you're good to go. And you could always use your hand mixer to do this, or if you have the electronic whisk, you could just go with it, and that's just the easy way to go. So like I said, you just need to add your nutmeg to your eggs and you whisk. The whisking you could use, as using a silicone whisk here, any whisk will do, whether it's plastic, whether it's aluminium, whatever whisk you have, it can just whisk your egg for you. So most essential thing about your cake is how well you whisk your eggs, and you could do it totally manual. Now you want to whisk your egg in such a way that when the egg is done, what you're going to realize is that it becomes very fluffy. When you whisk it, it's even lighter and easy to whisk. You realize that you don't even feel any water under when you are whisking. Yes, so you need to make sure that it comes so foamy, and usually the eggs will like double up or even more than that because you realize the quantity of eggs in the bowl. But when it was done, it was totally at the brim of my bowl. So you pour it in bits, usually like 2 or 3 times into the butter. You don't pour all in at once. So you add in your eggs in bits and then you just mix it up to make sure that it goes in perfectly. And like I was saying, you go in the one direction. So if you're going to be going clockwise, everything you're going to go clockwise. That helps your mixture up. So you just pour it in bits. You don't pour all in at once, or it's going to be hard to mix it up. And don't forget, how well you do this is going to result in your cake. Yes, so cakes are really nice when you do it well. If you do a bad cake, you won't be able to enjoy it that much. But this year, our cookie will be nicer and guy in the house. So make sure that you really do learn these things well. Yes, so yes, you just need to make sure that you really incorporate this thing well. Now, if your egg is more than necessary, sometimes you may need a little bit more flour to hold things up. But don't worry, the most important thing is that your egg is well beaten, your egg is well fluffy. And you see, when I got to the base of my bowl, you couldn't see water or anything. All you could see is just the foam of the egg. That's how beautiful the work is supposed to go. And you need to make sure that you mix this so well. Now, sometimes you could just add in your essence directly when you're beating your eggs. But then what we've come to realize, like in my house, is that when you add in the essence to the butter directly, like where it's gotten to, it smells nicer. The scent and everything is over there, like the flavor, the fragrance and everything. You feel it more. So yes, usually we don't add it to the eggs anymore. We just go directly into the mixture when we're doing it. So like I said, the baking powder is going to come into our flour to help it rise. You don't need too much of the baking powder, or the cake is going to rise too much, which is not really necessary. So just half a teaspoon is perfect for it. So you add it to your flour. You don't put that directly in. You mix it in your flour. Make sure that it's assembled everywhere and spread it evenly before it comes into the mixture. Now the final thing that goes into the mixture before the flour is to add the treacle and then the essence. Like I was saying, the essence is going to give it a nice fragrance. Then the treacle is going to also beat down the sugar in there and give you a nicer color, as well as the brownie. So I just mixed things up. But if you don't have a treacle, if you don't have a brownie, it's okay. You could just do without it. But then it's great when you do. And even if you don't, I've taught you how to do that. In my attajor milk recipe, I did a bit of the burnt sugar. You could easily do that and add it in here. So once that goes in, you realize that the mixture feels a bit separated because of the eggs. But what you do is to add in your flour. And when it comes to the flour, how you incorporate the flour matters as well. You need to make sure that your flour, you fold it in. So you realize how I'm going about it in the recipe. I'm not mixing it like I was creaming the mixture. No. You realize that I pick, I drop, I pick, I drop. It's like you mixing mortar. Yes. So you equally do that in bits. You don't pour all the flour in at once. Or before you realize, nah, after you cooking, and then your cake becomes too dense. And I added in my chocolate chips as well, together with a little bit of dried grapes. Yes, so you could do freeze cakes by using dried fruit. That preserves your cake. You don't go and do fruit cake with wet fruit. You can do that. It's going to taste nice. It's going to look nice. But then it may not last too well because, fresh fruits have a lot of water. And you want your cake to be able to be on your dining table for weeks or be in your freezer and come out all fresh and less watery. So use your dry fruit instead if you want to do cakes that, give you extra points. So, like I was saying, fold your cake well, the mixture. Fold and drop, virtually fold in the flour. If you knead or if you use too much pressure or if you mix it wrongly, what you end up doing is to activate the gluten. If you activate the gluten, it's going to come out very elastic. And on the you can say bed and tiny, okay, in a bed and then barry bisa, and yeah, guy. So we don't want a doughy kind of cake. We want cake that's as soft, as flexible, as nice, as tasty. That's what we want to come out with. So you don't mix it like just anyhow. You fold in the flour till every part of it is well mixed. And you realize my mixture is still dropping nice. It's still looking nice. Oh my god, this cake, it was So yes, you just grease your pans and then you pour in the butter into it. If you want to do cupcakes and you have some muffin cans, you have some smaller baking cans, you could just grease it a bit and then just put in your cupcake mold or the paper, the parchment paper. You just put it in and you pour your butter in. This is a simple way to go about your cupcakes because usually you could just put it in direct and then just put in your butter. But what I realized is sometimes it's a bit hard to spray the cupcake molds when you are doing it. If you don't spray it, if you don't grease it, it's just going to stick in. So when you're taking off the cake, sometimes there's some way, most of your cake is going to be stuck to your parchment paper. But then you could just skip it. You could just pour it in direct. Then you pour in your butter into your cake molds or cake cans. One thing you should note is when you're doing cakes, like I said in the red velvet recipe, do well to avoid filling your cake pans to the brim because it's going to rise. So if you fill it to the brim, it's some way. It's not the best. So do well to leave some space when you're filling your cake pans. And Your cupcakes, you could use your scoop to just scoop it out, your little into it. And that one to make sure you don't fill to the brim because it's going to rise. Don't forget, your cake pans are always going to rise. So be careful how you go about it. So once that's filled, if you want to add some toppings to it, you could always add toppings to it. You could add some dried fruit on top. You could have some fun with it. What you'd want to add onto it, you could add onto it. That's the beauty about it. So those ones I added chocolate chips, some of them I added the dried grapes. So it's up to you and what you want in there. Now when you're done, you need to make sure you preheat your oven. Preheat your oven. Make sure your oven is hot enough before it goes in there. Whether it's going to be 270, 180, just make sure that it's preheated before you take it in there. Now when your cake is in, well, for every oven at the top, the heat is more. So what you do is that you rotate it just to make sure. So when you're doing a larger batch, so that it's evenly distributed in there. But if you're doing a smaller batch, you may just have to put it in your rack well and then be more mindful about it. Usually at 180 degrees to 270 degrees Celsius, your cake should be able to finish baking within 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the quantity and the weather. Sometimes when the weather is very hot, it cooks faster. Yes. So you just need to make sure that you watchful for your cake. When your cake is done, the heat shouldn't be too much. If it's overly too much, it's going to brown early and the inside won't be well cooked early. But when your cake is done, you realize the color is going to look nice, like brown and nice. And then when you use a toothpick in there, you're going to get it all dried in there. And yes, when your cake is done, you just take it off the pans and then you put it on a cooling rack for it to cool. Now, what I forgot to mention is you need to make sure that your pans are well greased, else your cake is going to get stuck in there. You could grease it with oil, you could grease it with margarine. But I think around here, where there's a lot of margarine, you could just go your way with margarine. Margarine is cheaper and more accessible here than butter. Yes, and all those ones. But then you could easily do it with butter. You could do this with oil. And I've taught how to use the butter and how to use the oil in my red velvet cake recipe. So you could always check that out. That cake recipe was also so tasty, so nice. But this is, my daddy's handiwork. And yeah, it's a legendary bake. So learn it the right way here. So this is a beautiful cake. And this is so perfect for all occasion. So I hope you like this beginner's guide to baking with Abba, and I hope you try out this cake recipe for all your special occasions and events this year. And let me know how it goes. Give me that in your feedback in the comment section. Till I see you in the next food video, live life to the fullest. Be joyous, be merry. Live life. Wow.